With me today on Understanding Immigration, I have Art Del Cueto. I pronounced that correctly?
Right, there you go, yeah.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. Art's with the Border Patrol. He's been there since 2003. His first duty was in Casa Grande, Arizona, where he helped the effort in establishing a new substation at 3 Points, Arizona, along with a host of other things he's done with Border Patrol. Art, we're glad to have you on.
Thank you for having me. As always, I like to do that little disclaimer that when I do these things, I speak on behalf of the National Border Patrol Council, not the agency. And that's important because if I spoke on behalf of the agency, you would just get a cookie-cutter dog and pony show answer. And I'd rather tell you the truth.
So, for those at home, if they're not as familiar with Border Patrol, would you say that difference is, one works with the administration, one's a little more regulatory, one's more like a police force? What's
you have the Border Patrol. Obviously, we are supposed to patrol our nation's borders, although lately what we're doing more is babysitting.
Keyword supposed to.
Yeah, and processing under this administration. But, we've worked with different administrations before. I've been doing law enforcement for over 20 years down on the southwest border. And what I always like to say is, so I grew up on the border. I was born there, I was raised there, I worked there, and I lived there. I didn't, show up one day and decided to do this. I've been doing this for quite some time. It's been part of my life, my entire life, to be honest. And it's upsetting to see the direction that we are headed as a country. We always saw the problems that we would see on the border, but now those problems have expanded to the rest of the country.
Yeah. It sounds like it's a really personal issue for you, just based off of those three tenets that you put there. What do you think, having this be so personal, growing up there, makes you different than other Border Patrol agents, or what do you think makes this fire, burn a little stronger inside of you?
I think there's what's called street smarts.
Yeah.
Right? We all acquire them different ways.
Yeah,
and
of course.
There's so much that you can acquire from going to an academy, but it's a different perspective, a different feel when you have skin in the game because you've grown up there. So you've seen the ins and outs, you've seen how they operate. It's a different feel having grown up there and seeing the day-to-day lifestyle, and how back in the day it was more of the mom and pop shops that would be the operations that would cross illegals across the United States. They'd work for a couple of days and then they'd head them back. Now it's become such a tremendous money scheme for the drug cartels. Yeah. Well, they operate on the southern border. They're in charge of that whole area. They determine who crosses, when they cross, and they do it deliberately so they're able to distract Border Patrol agents from one area to the other. That way they can get either their product across or individuals that may have a more extensive criminal history into the United States.
So speaking of distracted Border Patrol, and the way that's almost intentional at this point, the way that we have aliens coming in, they're talking to Border Patrol one way, people run around the other way. There's a recent FAIR study that came out that we had 4.9 million border crossings underneath the Biden administration. Some part that I thought interesting about that number was the 0.9. That 0.9 came specifically from gotaways. Right. Do you think that's a big issue? Do you think that's something we're looking at here?
It's a humongous issue, and I know people concentrate on that 4 million, right? But let me explain to the audience what that 0.9 is. What are gotaways? It is so easy to come into the country right now, illegally, turn yourself in to an immigration official, claim that you have an asylum case, and then get released in the United States. And then you got to wait months, sometimes years, before you get your immigration court date. Yeah. That's the reality of how easy it is. It's catch and release. It's that easy. If it's that easy, can you even imagine the criminal element of that 0.9 that they are very much aware that they wouldn't even vet to just say, I'm here and let me go? That's how horrific it is. And when you see that the agency has arrested individuals from over 160 different countries, and when you see that the fentanyl has gone up in this country, the amount of heroin, the amount of methamphetamines, drugs in general, how horrific is that 0.9? How horrific is that group of gotaways that have come in? Where are they? And then let's look at it statistically and history. During the Obama administration, they had a large number of unaccompanied juveniles that were coming into the country. Of course, back then, those juveniles, they were 16 and 17 years old, but they were juveniles in the court size. Yeah. Where are they? And they're adults now.
You tell me. You're the Border Patrol. Yeah.
See what I mean? And then there's different entities within Border Patrol. So you got Border Patrol that guards the line. You got the Customs and Immigration officials that guard the ports of entries. And then you have ICE that are supposed to do the enforcement outside once they're outside the line. So, but then you got DHS and CBP. So the leadership there needs to be asked. You're so sure that it's working, that it's okay to catch them and release them because you're keeping record. Why don't you tell us what records you've kept of all the unaccompanied juveniles that came in and released during the Obama administration that are now adults?
Yeah.
And they won't have an answer.
It sounds like a lot of steps in the process there, and it seems like almost every day, and it's not something to help secure the border, it's something to open it up a little bit. The Biden administration always is changing policies. It seems like every week we see a new policy coming out, which is something that just kind of makes your job a little bit harder. Do you think that interaction between those agencies has gotten easier or harder during the Biden administration?
No, I think it's definitely gotten harder. There's information that one area will have that they won't share with someone else. It's just there's too many cooks in the kitchen, I guess is what I'd like to say, and it has become a humongous problem because aside from people not talking to each other, you're seeing the policies that are coming up. You're seeing the lack of policies, and it all translates to this administration has created a magnet for the criminal element. When you have individuals that know that they just got to cross, ask for asylum, they're going to get released, then it makes it easier for them to just do whatever they want because they're not getting vetted correctly. They need to detain these individuals at the border. You need to get immigration judges and asylum officers and asylum judges to the line, fast track these, but most importantly, detain these individuals that are coming across. Don't just release them. Yeah. And when you look at the asylum law, you're supposed to ask for asylum in the first country you step into outside of your country. Yeah. So we need to actually do sanctions against the countries that are facilitating travel of all these individuals through their country to get to our borders and then turn themselves in. Yeah. Somebody's got to answer to that.
Of course. And, we don't have people answering for it, really. And something I kind of want to understand is, being a Border Patrol agent, you're right down there. You were telling me a little bit while we were chatting before this interview started that, you got to go back down to the border in a couple days here. What did you say?
So I still work the line, yeah. So when I get out of here, I'm going to try to get down the line and try to work an afternoon shift or a night shift and see if I can get some hours in. Because it's that crazy right now. It's that crazy. I'm out in the Tucson sector, which leads the entire country in gotaways. This is the people that are getting away. Yeah. But they're still having to get agents to work in Texas, so they'll move them around so they can assist with processing faster. That's what the joke around is, process faster. So they're more concentrating in processing and releasing individuals that we know don't have a real asylum claim than they are in protecting the border where the gotaways are coming in and the drugs are coming into the country.
A question I have is, when you encounter someone at the border, you're down there, you have your night vision on or however it is that you're looking for people. What is that process like? I mean, they walk up and then you get them in a group, or what does that sort of look like?
So that's what's happening in a lot of areas as well in Arizona. It happens more in Texas where they're turning themselves in. For whatever reason in Arizona, you're still having to chase groups. You're having to track them. I work specifically on the Tohono O'odham Reservation, it's a Native American reservation. There's different treaties that have been made with the reservation. So a lot of the technology that you can use in other areas like Texas, you can't use them on the reservation. So a lot of it, as primitive as this is going to sound to a lot of people, is getting out of your vehicle, looking at the footprints, trying to determine how old that footprint is by the texture, by the sun, by whatever has turned over some rocks. And you basically do old-fashioned tracking through the desert, up and down the mountains, until you were able to catch the group or figure out what major highway they got to and were picked up by a vehicle. Okay. It's what you see in the John Wayne movies. That's actually what we're still doing in Arizona.
Yeah, seriously. And now, do you think that's a lack of funding from the administration that makes it so you track it that way, or is that the best way to do it?
Those are treaties that were done with the Native American reservation, and they're in that area. And you're looking at over 60 linear miles with Mexico. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people that are living down there that are making a lot of money off of human smuggling and drug trafficking. So they don't want to change any of those treaties because then it would damage their illegal business. And the agents that are down there on the line each and every day, they're the ones that are having to deal with it. And then we're seeing a lack of enforcement against individuals that attack agents. So everything is lined up for the criminal to succeed and for the law enforcement agents to fail. And that's part of the problem. And I'll tell you one big issue. And today I just got the news. There was a Border Patrol agent down in my sector. A lot of people may have heard of Brian Terry, and he was murdered by drug smugglers. He was murdered by drug smugglers 11 years ago. 11 years and over 260 days later, they finally convicted one of the shooters that was involved in his murder.
Wow.
11 years it took for them to convict this guy.
I didn't surprise. I didn't say something about statute of limitations.
That's that. I mean, if that isn't a slap in the face, I don't know what is. And those are some of the things that we've been having to deal with for many, many years now.
Yeah, that's terrible. That's terrible. And, you touched on it a few times, and I kind of want to bring it up here, the drug trafficking situation, the fentanyl stuff. Is this something, obviously we all know it's coming across, and we know it's really a plague on America right now, all this fentanyl we're dealing with. Are you seeing this typically with border crossers? Do we think this is more of an issue with the gotaways? You see it every day? What do we think?
It's every day. The cartels are recruiting juveniles, American citizen juveniles, to drive. They recruit them to be scouts. They recruit them to do pickups. They recruit them so they can go drop off supplies for the drug mules to continue their travel into the United States. So we're seeing all kinds of things. It's every day. What is horrific is when you start seeing these drugs come in the form that they look like candy. And now the latest is the fentanyl's coming in what looks like the sidewalk chalk that a lot of these children use to just draw on the sidewalk. That's the reality of what's happening on our nation's borders. We have seized enough fentanyl this year to kill every single United States citizen twice.
And that's just at your spot?
That's nationwide.
Okay.
But every citizen twice. Yeah. And something needs to be done because who's gaining from it? It's just the drug cartels. They're the ones that are gaining from it. They continue to bring their product across. They don't care what side of the aisle you voted. They don't care what side of the aisle your mom and dad voted. They just want to get the products across. They want to get them to the children. They got to get them to adults. We're losing Americans in record numbers. And one thing I'll point out, during the pandemic, the ports of entries were closed. Yet drugs were still coming in record numbers. And the reason I point that out is because there was a port director down in Nogales, Arizona, which is one of the largest ports in southern Arizona, that just got interviewed. And he said that drugs are not coming in between the ports. Now, let's get this into perspective.
Excuse me?
You're the port director.
Yeah.
So you're admitting that the drugs are coming through the port. Well, maybe you should quit, find another job, or start answering questions on why the drugs are coming through your port. Number one. Number two, you're lying to the American public because when the ports were closed, the fentanyl was still coming in record numbers.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people just speak to speak. They need to pay attention to what they're saying. It's similar to this administration saying that there's no problem at the border. There's no problem at the border. No one's walking across. And then a week later, they're upset because those people that are not walking across the border, the people that are not a problem, are in their backyard.
Yeah, no, it's disgusting. It's disgusting. Well, it looks like we're up against it here. Art, I really, really, really appreciate you coming
Thank you
in.
for having
Appreciate
me.
getting to hear the Border Patrol perspective on this entire situation. And, maybe we'll have you back next year.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I want just to be clear, I speak on behalf of the agents. I speak on behalf of the National Border Patrol Council. I do not speak on behalf of the Border Patrol.
Understood, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
So don't step in front of the line of those who still stand there and doing the right thing, filling out paperwork, giving background checks. I went through 6 years of medical tests. I had to have money. I had to have a sponsor. I had to speak some English, understand English, know about the government a little bit. And now you have people just jump in the line, getting in front. Asylum, I'm scared. And here it is. And while the rest of them who doing it the right way have to wait. And in the meantime, we're being played. And we're being invaded and destroyed from within.
So I hope, and I do always possess hope, that with a new administration, even with the new Congress, to peel back that layer of transparency and shed light into what's happening right now in these policies that are being put in place that are creating this horrible incentive for folks to come to this country illegally.
We're talking all over the country. That's the value of this the way you guys have this thing set up. And I want to say thank you to the news outlets that are here to get the truth out, because on the border situation, it's being blacked out by most of the mainstream media.